So firstly, thank you. As you all know, or as many of you know, this is our final session. So I just want to thank you all, whether you're here on the call or if you're watching this in the recording. Thank you for coming on this journey with us. It's been a 10 very fun 10 weeks for us. At least I've definitely communicated that back to the team. And we've had a couple of team members read through the chat and whatnot, and they've been really impressed and really happy to see how engaged you have been. I think all of you should pat yourselves on the back because this is not an easy feat. And so hopefully by the end of this, you can officially become, and once you receive your accredited certificate of completion from myself and the rest of the team at Codem and Codex, you can become the go-to voice for AI within your family. I know Thanksgiving is coming up. Again, Americans, you have so many holidays, it's hard to keep track. But hey, that could be a nice little flex you make there. Could be at the water cooler or coffee machine because you guys don't drink tea and whatnot. But well done to yourself. And thank you very much for all of you who've been coming week on week, and also those of you who've been watching and catching up. And even if this is your first session, welcome. Thank you for coming along. It's a pleasure to have you all. And you made it to the final session. So don't be too excited. I know many of you are going to be very, very happy with the fact that you don't have to hear my voice again. So can we just chill out? We still got an hour to get through things. So yeah, you're not free just yet. But going on to the point of receiving your accredited certificate of completion, this is something that I recommend you will really try and strive to ensure that you've caught up with all the previous sessions. We operate on a trust system such that essentially we're able to track when you logged, so having attended, and we cross-reference that in terms of whether you came to this call and whatnot, and also if you caught up on your own time. But there's obviously a strong amount of trust that we put there, and no one's abused it yet, so please don't be the first person to. But once you get that certificate, shout about it. We have people posting it on LinkedIn, putting it on their CVs. It's not resumes, it's CVs, curriculum vitae, but I'll give you resumes, Americans, and sharing it around and let people know about the hard work that you've put into this and whatnot. So, please do make sure you get that. And so to answer previous question around what does it take to actually complete the course, we actually only required an 80% completion to receive the certificate of completion. And the reason being is the fact that we kind of got overboard in these sessions to really ensure that the learners and everyone, all of you are well equipped and well prepared to enter the world of AI and embedding it within your day-to-day lives. And as such, you only need to have checked into 8 out of 10 sessions. Ideally, if you can do 10 out of 10, it just helps us know and whatnot. The deadline for that is the Saturday, the 28th of September. So that is around 2 weeks' time. After that point on the Sunday, the content center automatically turns off. And so unfortunately, you will no longer have access to it as such. But once you've done that, you can just email hello@codingwithcodex.co.uk, or alternatively, you can just message me and whatnot. You all have my email, faisal@codingwithcodex.co.uk. You've been receiving emails from me all throughout the program as such. And that way, then, once you've let us know that's happened, we will be in contact with you to give you a certificate of completion. So someone messaged me that unfortunately they were sick. I hope you're feeling a lot better now. They watched the recording, but they've checked into 7 out of 10. So do not worry, the person who's just messaged me in, provided you checked in for today's session, you meet the quota. And if you've watched the recording, as I'll show you here, so let's say, for example, I don't know, week 4, you watch the recording, and all it is that you have to do is just click on the link here and then fill out the form, and that will be considered as having checked in. And so, Ondina, I hope that also answers your question around catching up. If you've missed a class, we'll caught up with the video. If you head to the content center and make sure you fill out the check-in form here. Wonderful. All right, then. So with that, any questions before I move on? No, I'll take that as everyone's ready to start. Can I get a more engaging one? Can I get a thumbs up if you're ready to get started with today's session? You've got ChatGPT open and you're raring and ready to go. Wonderful. All right, then. I'm going to close the chat and we'll crack on. So today we're going to be covering the topic of acquiring new skills with large language models. Now, previously we've looked at LLMs, generative AI tools, as very much this additive toolkit that we can use to boost our pre-existing knowledge and whatnot, and sort of speed up, automate things that we can already do and we already know about. But in this case, we're actually going to be looking at, well, what happens if you want to acquire a new skill? Not necessarily within AI. I mean, everyone here has been attending these sessions as a means to learn about how to use generative AI tools. But now it's a case of saying, well, where can we use this elsewhere in our lives to actually increase our knowledge base? So large language models have been hailed as this sort of tool that's actually providing this new generational leap in the world of education. I remember when ChatGPT first came out and I was, in the workplace and speaking to some colleagues as such, and no one could really put their thumb on what made it so different. But then it became apparent very quickly. And this actually happened when college students got their hands on it. As we know, they're the biggest innovators when it comes to making their lives a hell of a lot easier. But one thing that we're now seeing that is more widespread and not many people realize is that large language models, as we previously spoken about, are these super intelligent programs that hold no context. But when you feed it the right context and you provide it with the right information and objectives as such, as we've covered in session 2 when it comes to writing effective prompts and subsequent sessions as such, they really reduce the barrier to entry for learning skills that otherwise would require a lot of investment in, say, finding a tutor and then or an instructor. Say, for instance, you didn't stumble across this program as such, and you got lost in the ether that is Google search, or hey, now we all know about Perplexity. You ended up going down a rabbit hole in a Perplexity chat as such, and it can be quite difficult as such. However, large language models provide us a way to supercharge our educational journeys and acquire new skills that somewhat mirror a personal tutor without the hefty cost. Now, I just want to preface this all by saying everything that we're going to be covering today can be achieved using the free tiers of AI tools. So unless you find that it's fitting for you and you've done your extensive research, please do not go ahead and invest a financial investment into an AI tool, and instead try and stretch the free tier as far as you can. I know I've said this constantly over and over again, and many of you are probably saying, yes, we get it, Faz, we understand. Don't spend our money, spend it elsewhere, treat ourselves, buy rubber duck, as such as such. However, this is something that is really important, that if you remember one thing, just know that the free tiers are more than capable of helping you in, I'd say, about 90% of cases where you want to learn a new skill. So learning a new skill or trying to figure out how large language models can help us learn one is quite a broad space, and we can learn essentially anything. I think we've covered elements where we've queried ChatGPT and its knowledge of, I think someone last week queried the Hugging Face tool that we covered last week in the session around the multiverse of large language models or multiverse generative AI tools around procurement data and whatnot. But in this case, we're going to keep it very accessible and very simple, and that is in learning a new language. In this case, we'll be exploring how ChatGPT can empower us to learn a new language, looking at the various ways we can use not just ChatGPT, but other large language models to test our knowledge, set ourselves up for success, and hold us accountable. So if everyone can just ensure that you've opened up ChatGPT here, and we should be seeing that, what's going to happen is that we're going to come back and forth from this, and we will crack on. So the first element when it comes to learning a new language is very simply learning vocabulary. And this can almost be seen as setting the base fundamental for our knowledge. So this cannot necessarily be a case where, just taking it away from learning a language just for a second, it's not necessarily a case where, we want to just get a list or a random list of things as such. However, it's a great way to start off by setting the foundations. Because like if you want to do anything in life, particularly when it comes to speaking languages, you need to know the vocab or you need to speak the lingo. And let's be honest, any particular domain of knowledge has its own lingo. So sometimes this is a really, really helpful thing to do. Even if you don't understand everything to begin with, you don't memorize it, just getting a lay of the land really helps. So as we can see here, in this instance of his worked example, individuals said to large language model or in ChatGPT, create a Spanish to English vocabulary list on the theme of cooking. And as we can see here, afterwards, after it's generated that list, we can then actually prompt the large language model to then actually practice it. So if we go to here, for example, and we can do this as a worked example if you want to follow along, or alternatively, we have a task coming up in a few minutes, so you can just watch and follow along saying, I would like to learn French. Give me a list of vocab that is based around, trying to think, based around playing sports. And so as we see here, it's given us a general sports terms that we can actually then go in. So for example, le sport, sport, une match, a game, une équipe, a team, le but, a goal. Didn't know that. Now we know as such. And it's given us a really comprehensive list here, but it keeps going on and on and on and on. So can anyone tell me one thing I could tweak my initial, this is a lot of information. So can anyone give me some advice on how I can tweak my prompt so that it's a bit more manageable? What am I missing from this prompt? If anyone can share in the chat. So as Paul says, give a specific country. Joanne says add a sorry, Colin says specific sport. So does Jennifer. Joanne actually brings up a good point, adding a country. As you know, French is not spoken just in France, but also in Senegal, in Morocco, and whatnot. So the dialect could change. So give me French. I want to learn French that is spoken in France. Give me a list of vocab that is based around playing sports, particularly, I can't spell particularly well, particularly, let's say basketball. And as Peters has mentioned, we limit the number of words that we have to learn so it doesn't feel too overwhelming. So as Peters very correctly suggested, and so is Leanne, using the top 25 most frequently used terms. So give me the top 25 most frequently used terms. I know I've misspelled frequently, but AI is smart, it'll figure it out. So if I redo that again, we can see that it's actually updated information and it's then given us more tailored information to the game of basketball. So for example, le rebound, quite simple, une pass, derrière, to shoot, as such, la faute, foul, I call those all the time and whatnot. And so as we can see here, it becomes very easy. Joanne's actually thinking two steps ahead and talking about written versus spoken. Ah, yeah, I love that. We're going to be covering that in a second. So really, really good that you brought that up. But as we can see here, we've got very manageable element to things and already generated what would typically require us to do a lot of research, particularly for the niche of playing basketball. We have here in our hands ready to go. But then what happens when it comes to actually practicing it? So we have the information, but then let's say we actually then want to practice said information and practice said vocabulary. Well, we know that large language models have this element of back and forth, particularly in the format where we interact with them on ChatGPT, Gemini, Bard. Sorry, not Bard. Bard doesn't exist anymore. Gemini, Claude, as such. So we can then actually, and we see an example here where we actually give a parameters for how we can practice something. So this individual has written, I don't know which member of the team wrote this, but thanks, let's practice the vocabulary list. Ask me one word at a time. You give me the English translation and I have to type the Spanish word. If I type the wrong word, don't tell me the answer. Instead, give me a tip and ask me for the translation of the word. Who can pick up what was done really well in this prompt? There's something that really stands out. Remembering the 5 elements of prompt writing, they've done this really, really well when they've written this prompt. Who can pick it out? If you don't feel confident in putting it in a group chat, please do feel free to DM me privately and I will ensure that your anonymity is remained. So Rebecca says specificity, 100%. Details, yeah, one word at a time. So everyone's hitting the symptoms of also the results of that. Don't tell me the answer. So as what are all of those parts? What could they all be classed as? Commands, exactly. Instructions. And there we go, Gerard, broken the prompt down into instructions. So as we can see here, when we're going to be learning something, it's really, really important that we're abundantly, we almost over-index on the side of being super, super clear with how we want to learn. Remember, again, going back to that analogy of AI is a super smart individual that has zero context in terms of who we are, what we're trying to do, and our outcomes, and how we want to achieve a certain goal. So this is where, it becomes really, really important. And someone was just messaging me now, detailed instructions, step by step, setting up those guardrails. Those are really important as such. To answer Jennifer's question, does it matter if the commands or instructions are linear? The order makes sense? Not necessarily, because bear in mind, this is where the intelligence part of artificial intelligence comes into play. And so it can be really helpful to be quite specific and put the instructions in a linear fashion. However, if we don't, no worries. And we can always go back and actually refine by sending another message. So I'm really glad that everyone picked up on that. That's good to see. And so another element is asking for a direct translation. Now, I know many of you would, typically go to Google and whatnot. I know many of you will be trying this already, but the thing that is really good when it comes to large language models is the contextual element of providing a translation. So remember, context is a key element when it comes to writing great prompts. So in this situation, we have here someone saying someone asking the ChatGPT, how do I say the following sentence in Spanish? I often travel to Mexico for work and go on vacation there. Now, if you wanted to take this a step further, we could actually add in the context of how do I say the following sentence in Spanish, insert particular dialogue. So we add that context in there, and then we get the more nuanced actual translation. But already ChatGPT has picked up on that, and it's given that says, and I'm not going to try and read Spanish because my accent is absolutely terrible compared to the fact my French, because I speak a bit of French. It says, please note that translations can vary depending on context, and this translation assumes a general meaning. So this is where, using tools like large language models really do help. We're going to take a quick stop here, and I want to show everyone this really good tool called DeepL. It's not something that's on the curriculum, but it's something that I've been personally using a lot, and I really do recommend you do try it out. Don't worry about it, opening it right now. I'll make sure to add it in Content Center afterwards, but this is a tool that actually uses AI and sort of the traditional translation services and blends them together. And I found it's very, very good for, a whole variety of languages as such, particularly when it comes to French and sort of understanding the nuances around that, but tangent averted. And so for your first task, I would like everyone to open up ChatGPT and in any particular language that you'd like to learn. So one that you don't speak, or you can do one that you do already speak if you can speak multiple languages. Please, can you generate an essential vocab list? And I put essential in italics for quite a purposeful reason. So if anyone can figure out what I mean by essential, please do share with the group. And once you've done that, share your outputs and share what you inferred from essential and pop a thumbs up. And you can use this time to answer any questions. So please do feel free to pop it in the chat as such and whatnot, or DM me DM me privately if you want to keep your anonymity, or come off mute. So Joanne says, has it gotten better than when we were in high school trying to translate a sentence in German and adding it back into Google and coming back and being completely different and wrong? It's a really good question, Joanne. So I think this is where nothing can always be 100% perfect, but it does a very, very good job. And so DeepL differs from traditional Google Translate in the sense of it can pick up nuances as such. And I'd actually recommend we try that. So we can actually try this while, if you're just following along and you want to see how this works, let's try it now. So give me, how would I say, can I play the next, can I join in and play in the next game in French? So that says, est-ce que je peux je voudrais jouer dans les prochains matchs. So if we take that, and it also gives us a more casual tone, je pourrais joiner jouer dans les prochains matchs. And if we put it into here, we don't want that as Indonesian. Let's go to English. As we can see here, we've taken it from ChatGPT, we put it into DeepL, and it's actually given us back the word for word, can I join in and play the next match? So we can already do a litmus test for ourselves to actually see whether it works or not, which is really, really cool. So someone has just messaged me directly saying that they asked for the Paris Metro vocabulary, which is really cool to see. And I'm really excited to see, you know, what everyone comes up with. And do you find it useful? And can anyone call out or explain why I made essential in italics? Why I put it there? Exactly, Jennifer, to narrow it down, because this is where, but also it's not just um so not it's not necessarily a case where we want a general aspect of things, but essential vocabulary list can mean different things to different people. So this is where setting the context of what you're trying to learn or what you want on being super, super clear in terms of, is it essential vocabulary to get around? Is it essential vocabulary to order at a restaurant, order food, go grocery shopping? You know, it's that element of the reason why I put it there is to encourage everyone so that, we're thinking about, yes, we want to learn a particular language or we want to get a certain number of words. But in this case, what is essential to me in this particular instance is understanding how can I go to Paris on the weekend? I wish I could, even though it's not that far away, but hey, cost of living. How can I go to Paris? And then, it's essential for me to play a basketball game, in Paris. So how can I then extrapolate those words that are going to be really important for me in that instance? And so that I can use that when I go. So we'll give everyone one more minute. Once you're done, if you can put a thumbs up. So FG actually generated the essential vocabulary list to help you ask how to get to a hotel from the airport in Japanese. And it not only has the Japanese script in there, but it also has the transliteration, which is really cool to see. So C Banerjee asked for essential Chinese vocabulary and gave 6 to 10 basic greetings, numbers, common names, and it all had the English translation plus the transliteration, which is really cool to see. Wonderful. So Ondine is ready to move on. And so whenever you're ready to move on, everyone, if you can just put a thumbs up in there. Neil's actually improved by adding pronunciation for their list for traveling the metro in France, which is really cool to see. Wonderful. Everyone's ready to move on. All right, then. Cool. So, as we've looked at beforehand, asking for a translation, when learning a new language, this comes in really handy as, as we've seen in several instances here, sometimes when we want to get a translation, we can actually ask for alternative translations. And I guess this kind of actually weaves itself quite nicely into learning sort of anything. So whenever you're learning a particular concept, and we take it outside the scope of learning a language, whenever you're learning a particular concept, there are multiple ways that you can learn a particular, topic, skill as such. And so using this as a basis to understand, hey, there's not just one way we can speak a language. There's not just one way that you have to learn a particular thing. So sometimes if we were to go down the route of, let's say, learning programming skills, I'm going to speak to that because I'm also a software engineer. Um, and that there's not just one way to learn what a variable is, for example. And there's multiple different ways in which we can actually get a large language model to form our mental model. So there's actually a really helpful thing. And through asking for different explanations or different translations in this situation, it actually helps us to, recognize patterns and understand the topic that we have at hand. In this case, it's going to be learning a language. But then let's say you want to actually go down back to the language learning element. Let's say where we want to take things to the next step. So you could be reading a book, you could be reading a news article, but sometimes getting the literal translation for things doesn't actually help. So this is where having a large language model break down the structure of sentences to you, and it can label words using a specific part of speech, and understanding how something is formed can be really, really important. If you're going to be going down the STEM route, this is a very, very big thing that I really recommend, you embed within your sort of toolkit when it comes to learning with large language models, and that getting it to break down large pieces of information into small digestible elements. I know we've seen this in previous weeks, but sometimes it can just be a data dump in terms of, you're reading through a paragraph and it's just not making sense, or you've lost context or something. So it's really important that we try that. And I really do recommend that, you give that a go at some point. And then also explaining as an example sentence. So in this case, it can be fitting things into context. So in this case, the individual has put, what does in a noodle mean, and what part of a speech it is. And then not only do we get the literal translation, but also we get to see how it fits into the wider context of the sentence. So this is where it becomes really, really helpful. Again, looking at the parallels when it comes to learning other elements and whatnot, sometimes missing over small details can be quite key. Can be quite key to actually really stunting your, so not key, can actually hinder you in your speed to learn a new skill as such. So really paying attention to the details, and instead of you having to figure out, okay, there's this particular symbol that you see if you're learning a STEM-based skill, or there's a particular phrase that you see that keeps coming up that you can't seem to pin down, and you've done a bunch of Googling. You can just throw it into a large language model, and provided you've given the right context, you can then actually go from there. All right, I'm just gonna go to present so that we don't go to the next element. So, actually, I need to highlight this. I'm just gonna copy and paste this. So I have a question. I have a task for you all. I'm going to copy and paste a language in sentence in a language in the chat that I'm somewhat certain very few of you may know. You have three elements to this. If you could first identify the language, translate it to English, and then go ahead and drilling down into sort of the nuances of it, if you can figure out what the underlying word is, and then pop it back into the chat. So first of all, there's three elements to this task: identify the language, translate it to English, and then the underlying word, which is quite a long one, then let us know what that word actually meant. So we're starting to get some responses in the chat. I won't read it out just just until everyone has got it. Peter has also got the underlying word. So we'll give it a couple minutes. I won't read it out in case someone doesn't have the chat open because they're currently working away at it. So we'll give it about 30 more seconds. So someone DM me the answer. You're very correct. And I think it's fair game. If you've got the answer, please do feel free to pop it in the chat. If you need any help, yeah, please do pop it in the chat and whatnot. So exactly, the language which many of you are sharing in the chat is actually Indonesian. Reason why I picked it out is because I'm currently learning it. Why I'm learning it, my fiance is from Indonesia and she lives in the UK, but all of her family are over there. So hey, gotta learn. Speak to the in-laws. But the word that was underlined, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too far on, Manar Jamanakan, but basically means translate. It's a very long word, but already we can see here how using something like an LLM to break it down for us and just copy and paste within that nice, unique flow of such, can actually speed up our learning quite a bit. Because if I was to come off here, oops, and let's say I was to paste it in here, it's very difficult to figure out what lines up with what. So this is where sometimes having a large language model there to hand and just, instead of having to go back here, it's more in the smoother flow of sort of the chat mechanisms. It really does help and speed up our learning as such. Wonderful. And FG's got that as well, which is great to see. All right, then how are we doing on time? Cool. About 5 minutes left. 5, 10 minutes left. Oh, I've got the Wheel of Death on my laptop. That's not good. There we go, it's gone. Cool. So, explaining grammar and usage, you can use a large language model to explain to you specific grammatical rules and concepts, which is great, particularly when your first language is English. But again, the parallels to learning anything alongside, there are always holistic rule of thumb to any particular skill that you want to learn. And so sometimes in this case, it's going to be grammatic, it's going to be grammar, it's going to be informal, sort of the dialect, the implications that a particular dialect has when it comes to using certain words and whatnot. So this is where, again, large language models really do come forth in presenting their strength, as it shows us that we can actually pick up those rules of thumbs without going through any embarrassing experiences, but also just to get started as well, because that way we're far ahead and not have to rely on experience. And it's almost like the fire by baptism as such, but very much a case of we can expose those sort of well-known rules that wouldn't be known to a novice as such. And then one of my favorite things when it comes to large language models, and I actually encountered an individual who wasn't in a financial position to actually afford coding sessions. I mean, they hadn't heard of us. That's what I'm saying. Even still, after speaking to them, I think they're going to come on board one of our free programs. That's part of our Tech for Good initiative. But they were using ChatGPT to learn the coding language Python. And what they had done very cleverly, they had actually constructed or given the instructions to ChatGPT to generate them personalized exercises that they would do every single day for 5 minutes to build their knowledge base, and they got quite a way there. And so using and leveraging large language models to be your personal tutors is a great way to generate exercises out of thin air. You know, the concept is something, as I mentioned, is not just only applicable to languages, but applies to applies to learning anything new. I think this is something that is really, really handy to have in your back pocket. That can be whether you're refreshing your information on, let's say, a particular briefing document, and you can upload that, provided it has no personal information within it. Or alternatively, it could be something which is just learning a new skill or a particular language. And then this is a really cool element when it comes to ChatGPT. Now, can I get a show of thumbs up who has ChatGPT on their phone, on their mobile device, the app? This is going to be quite specific for ChatGPT. Okay, so Neil does, Ondina does, Leanne doesn't. That's completely fine. FG does, so does Stephanie. Cool. So in the instance of the web platform or the desktop app, you can use ChatGPT almost like a virtual text partner as such. And so it's really helpful when it comes to having that almost like mental practice and mental sparring, if you want to call it, depending on how you look at professional and personal development as such. But you can practice with them anytime. I know there's several apps out there that will actually connect you to an individual who lives across the world to learn a particular skill. I think in that realm is more languages acquisition such. However, we can use ChatGPT whenever we want by, pulling up the app as such. What I'm going to do actually, I've not done this before. This is going to be a live demo that's been unpracticed as such. But for those of you who can see here, I have ChatGPT open on my phone. I don't know how I can share it to my screen, so we're going to try this. If I do this, I'll just pause it there. We can see here that I've clicked the headphone icon on the bottom right-hand corner of the iPhone app screen, and it's brought up this sort of voice prompt. So if I do this, I want to learn French and I would like for you to be my French conversational partner. Only ask me in French questions. Keep your answers short, maximum 50 words. Ask me questions and let's start the conversation with the following topic, les sports. Bien sûr. Well, this is why live demos don't always go too well. So I think actually I clicked something that I actually, because of my phone's on Do Not Disturb. But already there we got the. Oh, okay. I don't understand, so let's stop there. But as we can see there, slight delay, but even still, we have someone or we have a program that straight out of our pockets, we can actually start practicing a particular language, or even still, you can ask them to be a professor in a particular, space and whatnot. And hopefully you don't get the delay, so you don't get that jump scare of how ChatGPT immediately switches to a French accent very well, and you think, oh, that was a bit embarrassing because you did it on a call with your community as such. And then finally, going into just before we got our final exercise, asking for common expressions. So again, the parallels to learning another particular skill can be common tropes within a particular skill set. It can be common knowledge as such. In this case, sort of getting straight to the point, what do you need to actually navigate around as what not? You know, what do you need to learn to actually really start implementing your knowledge into a particular space? So in this case, there's a difference between learning a language and then becoming, fluent in it as such. And sometimes to make your conversation sound more natural, it's important to understand common expressions, phrases, idioms. And so this is where a large language model can really help. And so, final task. In any language that you do not currently speak, please generate 5 phrases with the English translation that are the most commonly used. If you want to say colloquial will make or break you, that is very, very true. But at the same time, it can be quite impressive if you learn a particular language. I think someone actually I think someone picked a language from Star Trek the last time I ran this session. So it's going to be what, 12 weeks ago. And there was no colloquial element, but hey, like they gave a whole guide on how to learn Klingon. I think that's a language from Star Trek as such. I'm more of a Star Wars fan myself. But yeah, it can just even be impressive and a great way to get started as such. So Banerjee says has created 5 common phrases in Korean. So you got 안녕하세요 as such, and it's also given the Korean script, but then also the transliteration, which is really helpful. And so FG is done. So if you all can share into the chat once you have done and whatnot. Gerard's going to give us one of the most common phrases when, one of their most common phrases when used abroad. I'm waiting for them to share. Lo siento, no entiendo. Sorry, well, my limited Spanish says, sorry, I don't understand. I think that's a translation for that. Give me a translation as well, Gerard. I want to learn a bit of Spanish as well. I assume that's Spanish, lo siento. Nice. Rebecca has shared some German phrases. So I'm not even going to try. My German is nicht sprechen so Deutsch. My German is terrible. Ondina created some created some phrases for when they are going to Rome. Well, hopefully you get to use it. And then also Neil has used French. Stephanie has used the most commonly used American English phrases translated into Ukrainian. That's really interesting. So taking American English and translating those literally into Ukrainian. I wonder whether there's something in there in terms of whether you can pick out the most commonly used terms that are mutual to both languages to make it a little bit easier to learn. NFG has gone ahead and gone down and got some Klingon phrases, which is always cool to see. And then finally, if you're not sure what you should be prioritizing in your language learning, or even still just in your general, process when it comes to setting out learning a new skill, you can ask ChatGPT or any sort of large language model to generate you a personalized curriculum based on your particular goals. In this case, it could be your language level. So for example, if FG was somewhat fluent in Klingon, they don't need to start right at the beginning, as such. Or Stephanie spoke a bit of Ukrainian already. She wouldn't need to start right at the beginning, but you could feed that into large language model such that you can create a nice verbose curriculum for yourself. Something that I'm constantly reminded of is by one of our heads of curriculum or curriculum leads, Arjun, in the team is, why in the world did we not ask ChatGPT to create the curriculum for our AI course? Yeah, he constantly reminds me of that, but then I have to say that's a bit too meta in this case. So yeah, it's definitely something which, never know. All right then. So I'd like to say thank you again for coming along. This brings us to the end of the session. Any questions? I realize we are at the end time, so I just want to say a big, big, big thank you for all coming along. Please do ensure, I'm not sure if I have it to hand, so let me just repaste it back into the chat. If you do want to keep in contact, and it's been such a wonderful and lovely cohort, please do ensure that you've checked in for today's session, number one, so that way we can log your attendance. And then number two, sign up to the community platform. Let us know what I should be directing the team to build and whatnot as such. Um, Gerard asked, what is French for rubber duck? I actually don't know. If you can tell me that, I think that'll make my day. But I think the team may get a bit frustrated about me just constantly banging on about rubber ducks. But hey, that's their misery, not mine. Jennifer asked, can you share a bit more about a community platform? It's basically just we're building out basically our own space where we have groups, you can connect with one another, you can share questions, you can ask anonymous questions. So it's not doesn't stay anonymous to us, but similar way in which you would DM, let's say myself directly, you could ask anonymous questions such that other people can sort of answer and whatnot, and it's a safe space. And it's basically a way for us all to stay in touch. I do believe it's in the programming to be running monthly update sessions for everyone, completely free of charge as always, so that everyone keeps in the loop and we can continue updating any progress that is made throughout the world of AI as such. And then also you can get in contact with, you can actually join our other groups. So we have ones around coding, ones around, there's coding, there's actually ones of institutions as such, but hey, I'm just building it and I'm being told what to put on there. So yeah, with that, we are 1 minute over. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any. If not, I hope you have a wonderful day, of a fabulous weekend, and I look forward to sending you over your certificate of completion. And I also look forward to seeing you on our community platform, or I'll see you when I see you. It's my absolute pleasure, everyone. All right. My pleasure. My pleasure. Take care, everyone. I'm going to wrap up the call now. And yeah, hopefully you'll be hearing from me very, very soon with your certificate of completion to hand. Take care, everyone.